Welcome to a very special TOS podcast in association with BetDex, an innovative crypto exchange who are very kindly sponsoring our podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about what they're doing in this betting space and the innovations that they're doing. But the main focus today, we have a very special guest, the leader of the TOS masses, the founder of Tradeonsports, and a very, very experienced trader. I think this will be a really interesting podcast for everyone to get a real insight into trading, into the current landscape of exchange betting, and also kind of into the mind of some tips and advice on how you can become a better trader as well. So good morning, Pete. Thank you very much for joining me on this podcast today.
Yeah, that's no problem. No problem.
So yeah, I've got lots of questions, and to be honest, I could probably be asking you stuff, all day long. So maybe this could be a kind of first part of a series of pods. I suppose the first question is how you got into sports trading. Let's say what were you doing before? What was your life before sports trading? And what was the kind of, I suppose, the kind of eureka moment where you thought, okay, yeah, this is something that's got potential, and this is something that I really want to invest my time and money into.
Yes, yeah. Well, when I left school, this is going back quite some years. I was quite interested in horse racing, and indeed, I actually worked for a bookmaker, an independent bookmakers, between the ages of about 18 and 20, and then I sort of left there and I joined the Air Force. But to be quite honest, once I joined the Air Force, I sort of about horse racing and betting and whatever. And although I was obviously aware of it, I was never really. It didn't really pique my interest, And then all of a sudden we found ourselves in Afghanistan, and this lad said, "Have you seen this Betfair thing?" And he managed to get onto it. The internet connection was very poor, but I could see the prices were moving. I said, "How does this work?" He says, "Well, I put this in and somebody's taking that bet and I can ask for a price and whatever." And, I sort of thought, that's very, very interesting. And, I had it in my mind. As soon as I got back, I opened an account and had a look, and then the eureka moment, as you would. I looked in. I think Reading were playing Sunderland or something, and they were 1-0 up. And then all of a sudden I noticed that the price, as the game was going on, was going down. And I thought, wait a minute, you can go in here and then you can come out of here and you can make a profit. And that's what started it all.
And was that something that you'd done before? So you say you saw the exchange, a friend of yours showed that to you. Did you have experience of trading on financial markets before?
No, I not at all. No, not really. I do dabble in the financial markets, but I'm not very good at it. I'll admit. I mean, all I do is hold shares. I don't do day trading or anything like that. I think that's what appeals to me about trading on the sporting markets. I mean, for example, if you trade on a football match, pre-match, there's a start and there's an end. If you're trading in the financial markets, there's no start and there's no end unless your stop loss is hit, or when do I get out, when do I, and that's always a problem. Whereas with football betting or football trading before pre-match, when you're getting out a minute before the kickoff.
And I suppose I guess for me, because I came to trading, I suppose when the exchange was a bit more mature, so probably when I started dabbling with betting, it was maybe like 2008, 2009. Similar to you, I worked for IG Sports, which is sort of now defunct. It was sort of soon after I'd left, but I think that was just a coincidence. I don't think I was to blame. But but in a way, I looked at it and thought, I was taking bets from customers. I think you were saying you worked at a bookmakers when you were younger.
Yes,
What was that experience like? I guess working in a bookies, kind of the characters that you would have met and the kind of bets you were taking, and I guess the kind of markets and things people were betting on would have been a kind of much smaller smaller menu than it would be now today.
Yes, I think now, like I said, if we had what we have now and you could go back in time, you'd be brilliant. But still, it was a great time. I mean, we had some great characters. But what I did notice is that certain individuals would come in, and when they had a bet on something, then you followed it. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, I was 18-year old. You know, you're supposed to looking at early 80s. You know, and I was wandering around with, you know, over a grand in my pocket. You know, through winnings and things like that. The winnings that we made outdid the you know, our wages. We're very poorly paid, but you know, if you were switched on, what you did, you just followed the smart money. So, and there was all these sort of characters. You know, I mean, it was an independent bookmaker, and what they used to do on a Saturday, the board boy used to work at this Irish pub. He went there, and the pub took more money than the bookmaker. It was all sort of, you know, underhand and all this type of thing. And then the independent bookmaker, they got taken over by Ladbrokes. Ladbrokes said, "Do you want a job?" And what you couldn't do with Ladbrokes, if you're a manager, you couldn't go onto the floor. I used to spend quite a lot of time on the floor, and so I left basically. But yeah, it was good times, but I never sort of, you know, I never kept that interest going. As soon as that finished, it was like a job and it was over. But yeah, I can't believe it. Some of the winners we had were mental.
And so, in terms of how they restricted customers, now it seems like a lot of betting shops are quite trigger happy. You know, even if you're just taking, let's say, small arbs. I know when I spoke to Johnny, his stories of sort of traveling around London with his merry band, you know, going
Yes,
to all
that's
the
incredible.
betting shops.
That's unbelievable.
So I suppose when you were there, what was the tolerance like for sharp bettors? Was it kind of a case of, you know, they had good information, so you would kind of tolerate their bets and you'd basically tail along? Were there any customers where you just said, look, you know, we're not going to lay a bet for you? Were there, you know, runners, for example, in those situations like there are now?
We had to ring up if anything over £20. I mean, don't forget this is going back 40 years. Anything over £20, you had to ring up. But they knew certain people, yes. But as soon as the guys that came in, you know, had the bets, you know, that the guys that we knew, then that they would have laid. I can almost guarantee they will have laid that money off. You had to give that over to the boss straight away.
Interesting.
So
Very.
he would have laid that money off, or they would have backed more on that money. Yes, certain customers, and there were certain people who were quite clever. I don't know what they were doing. They were doing it sort of like these, like Yankee type things, and they were coming in, and you know, people like them, they obviously, if the first one came in, they started laying the money off. So yes, they did. I would assume they did lay quite a bit of money off.
I suppose it's quite interesting sort of, when I read stories about, you know, Bill Benter and, you know, other kind of gamblers of that time, because you didn't, I suppose, have that access to information, and, you know, the kind of statistical models you can produce now. So bookies were kind of in the dark about a lot of things, but also punters. So I suppose
Yes.
it was kind of similar at the
I mean,
time.
football was primeval, really. I mean, the over round would have been ridiculous. I can't remember what it was, but it would have been nearly 20%, 15 to 20%.
15 to 20. Wow. Okay.
I would imagine. I'd imagine. You know, sometimes, you know, today it's 10%, but then it would be mental. Yeah, because nobody knew, and like they said, they just had these. They had you know, the weekly football coupon, and the odds didn't change.
Really,
So
really.
it's and basically you had to pick one from each section, like a six timer, and always one would let you down. And yeah, it was almost. I never saw anybody win on those coupons. Single bets, yes, or single score, correct score, yes, one or two. But on those coupons, they were just a money maker that never had any return on any of them.
Really interesting. And you mentioned about following smart money. So again, it's kind of punters coming in, you know, who are quite shrewd, and you could kind of recognize that from their bets. That's something I think that I've found is kind of a key component of what you do now. So with the pre-match trading,
Yes.
that you do in Tradeonsports, which is a great benefit to the members and the software that we have
Yeah.
to do that. So what is it about? I mean, maybe for in layman's terms, when he was kind of not familiar with that term. So what specifically do you mean by smart money, especially when it comes to betting exchanges?
Well, I mean, I think really the only thing that I've really looked at is the pinnacle price, and if that starts coming in, if there's a big difference between that and say that the exchange price, then there's room for movement.
And
That,
for anyone who doesn't know as well, so what is it that makes? And so I know these are maybe for some
yeah,
listeners, these are going to be basic questions, but some
yeah.
people might not be familiar with Pinnacle and why it's quite
Yes,
unique
Pinnacle are
compared to other
regarded. Yeah,
bookmakers.
Pinnacle are regarded as the number one. You know, so they're. I know there are others, but that's what that most people go off. There, if that there's a saying in the betting world: if you can beat the Pinnacle price, the Pinnacle opening price, you carry on doing that, then you should, in the long term, in the very long term, be on top. And I think that's what people don't quite understand when you say long term. I do mean long term.
And would you say Pinnacle is still kind of regarded as the sharpest out there? I know, the industry, the betting industry in general, is kind of going through a lot of a turbulent time. There's a lot of layoffs, including at Pinnacle, because the model that they use on this kind of low margin, again, and kind of moving the price on sharp action. I think others have tried to replicate it, and it has been a challenge for them. Would you say that they're still kind of regarded as the sharpest
I would say
indicator?
so. Yes, I would
Okay.
say so. Yeah, and I haven't heard of most people where you pick up on blog posts from various people, this, that, and the other. A lot of it is beating the Pinnacle price, and that. And I think if you can beat the Pinnacle price, yes, you long term you will make a profit. Wisdom of the crowds, they call it.
And so, in terms of how that applies to pre-match trading, what kind of things are you looking out for? Obviously, so to see if there is a,
Yeah.
let's say, a discrepancy between the Pinnacle price and the exchange price. And I notice as well in terms of it's important to time your trades for when you're looking at pre-match trading. So, is there any sort of general advice for anyone who is looking to look at pre-match trading to try and profit from games, before a ball is kicked? So, what kind of things would you want to be looking for?
Yes, I mean I can give you stories on this. I can talk about this for a while. Dealing with the immediate question, what are you looking for? Well, we've got some software.
We've got
Essentially,
a
all that
visitor, sorry.
yeah, essentially all that does is show you where the money's going. It essentially it's just showing you if the money's building up on that selection. And what I look for, I like to see that the money's built up over a few hours, a good few hours, and then the price hasn't moved. I like to see a price that doesn't move, but the money's building up. Then as soon as you see that the Pinnacle price is quite a bit different from that price, then that's a key to go on. Now, of course, once you get on, it doesn't mean to say it's going to go in your favor. It can go either way, but there's a good chance that it can go your way. And providing you put in a stop loss and stick to that stop loss every time, long term, you will be profitable. I mean, when you put money into the market, nobody knows where that price is going. We had an experiment, didn't we, between about 5 or 6 of us. And it just goes to show some people had plus 50 points at the end. Some people have minus 50 points. But if you stick in a stop loss, your losses, you're not having 50-point losses. You're having 10-point losses, but you're still having sort of like 50-point gains. So it's trading, pre-match trading is the best way to make money on the exchanges, I think.
Yeah, so just for listeners, we had an experiment in TOS where there were a few of us. Pete sent over selections, so different games, each weekend, and we had to predict, for a particular team whether the price was going to shorten or drift out, and I'm pretty sure I did quite sort of
Yeah,
terribly at it. I tried sort of different things, trying to anticipate things like, again, if it was a kind of a big name team, but and if their price is sort of traditionally shortened, sort of the betting history, looking at other bookmakers. But what I found was actually the most useful tool was the tool from TOS, again, which was looking at the pinnacle markets, looking at that kind of sustained build up of money in the market. So it was quite a reading exercise, and of course, sort of Pete did the best out of that experiment.
yeah. The problem is with that, I didn't want to do the best on that. I was hoping that I would do the worst on that, just to show, because I mean anybody can trade these markets. They can put the money in. You don't know which way that price is going to go, because you don't know. All of a sudden a player can go ill, or there can be jiggery pokery going on, and it can go anyway. So that's what people must remember. But as providing you have a stop loss, you can have a guess. You can guess which way it's going to go. We've just using an educated guess through this software. That's how best I can describe that. However, what you must not do, I'll give you my background in this. When I left the Air Force, I sort of, did this on a fairly big level. And, I'll give you an example of where it went wrong one day. I can remember getting up one morning, and it was I think Arsenal were playing Manchester United in the FA Cup. And there were rumours floating around that the Manchester United team was going to be weakened. And so I put, this is idiotic, really. I put £5,000, my whole bank, on Arsenal at around 2.38 or something like that, anticipating that it will go down. So this was Sunday morning. I put this on, and keeping an eye out. And I can't believe how lax I was in those days. Keeping a sort of eye out. Yeah, no, it's not really moving. It's not really moving. And then I noticed it moved out to 2.4, 2.42. So basically, I was at £50 a tick, and I thought if I come out at 2.42, I'll have a £60 loss or something like that. Anyway, I was just about to get out of that trade when all of a sudden I couldn't get on. The Betfair platform had gone down, so it was about an hour and a half until kickoff, and Betfair platform had gone down. I'd got a £5,000 back on Arsenal. I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? Thankfully, I had a credit card, and I was able to get onto BetDex and but I had to have £8,000. I had to put in £8,000 to cover the lay on Arsenal. So I had to cover that sort of lay, and I ended up losing. About £500, which is not the end of the world. But if you're only taking out little bits, if you're making little bits of profit, £500 can be, that's 10% of that bank. But what I'm saying is, I was lucky. I had access to £8,000. I was stupid enough to put £5,000 in that bank. It went down. The platform went down. I opened up one at BetDex. But you imagine that today. So in this scenario, Arsenal then went on, Manchester United didn't field a weakened side. They won the game 3-1. So I lost that Betfair, but I won at BetDex. And then what I did, I transferred the money back and whatever. However, you can imagine, can't you? Today, you've lost £5,000 on Betfair. Are they going to, with these new betting rules that are coming in, how much you can affordability and all this, would you be able to open a BetDex account and put £8,000 in just like over a minute? No, you can't do that. So really, if you are going to be doing these pre-match trading, I would trade a lot less, and I would have different access to different exchanges. Don't just rely on the one exchange.
I think just even you mentioning that you're able to use a credit card on a betting account is just kind
Yes,
of new to me that was an option back then.
yes,
Yeah, and it does seem to be a more frequent problem. I mean, I guess Twitter and social media kind of amplifies. Maybe it's a little bit exaggerated, but I've experienced it many times where markets have been suspended. The site has gone down, and again, that is quite scary. Especially for people with sort of sizable
yes,
banks or who are
yeah,
doing precisely what you mentioned in terms of large positions with the intention of actually trading out before the match, and your funds are kind of stuck. And then, like you say, the kind of deposit limits and affordability rules now,
yes,
you just wouldn't be able to
yes,
do
yeah.
that.
You've got to be sensible. Let's put it this way. Let's be honest about this. Very, very few people are going to be making their living out of doing this. Very few percentage. Very few percentage. So really, you've got to look at it as like a business, but you're investing some of your capital. If you put £1,000 into the market, you're looking at £10 a tick. £2,000, you're looking at £20 a tick. I would say, the beginner, there's nothing wrong in putting a couple of £100 in or a few £100 in, and then, building it up that way, learning about it. I mean, for example, we've seen, you and I have seen the best time to be in the markets is unfortunately is 4:30, 5:30 on a Saturday morning, isn't it? That's the best time. That's one of the best times to get, because the money's starting to move, across over in the east of the world. It's learning things like that. But throwing money in and thinking you're going to be, is the easy ride is no, it's not.
So you mentioned again sort of money flowing in from Asia. So maybe explain to
Well,
listeners and
we
viewers
assume,
kind of how the Asian markets kind of influence what's happening here. Someone like, for example, Tony Bloom, has had this kind of huge influence, spotted that kind of opportunity, made his fortune to build up Brighton. So what is the kind of difference in terms of how things are bet on in Asia compared to
well,
the UK?
it's handicap betting mainly, because the theory is in that handicap it's an equal book, a 50% book, so people can put a lot more money on, and essentially, obviously, when they're 6-7 hours ahead, that's when they're waking up and they're assessing the situation, and that's when the initial money will obviously be going in, and unfortunately it's just a little bit too early for the majority of us, even myself. I still think you can get some good moves though, on a Saturday morning, especially in the German markets, the German Bundesliga. But the only trouble is with that league, obviously, you can't throw money in and out. Indeed, we used to, when I first started doing this, we used to be able to put money in on a Thursday night. And then you used to monitor that. There's no way you can do that now. You wouldn't even think about doing that now. And indeed, you have to think about it, putting it in on a Friday night, because obviously you need, if you are putting your money into a market and you are putting it in earlier than you're around the computer, you have to have something like BetAngel, which will cut out the stop loss, but the computer has to be on. Otherwise, you wouldn't leave money in the market overnight. But yes, it's they seem to start. The money seems to start coming in early, and so that would, you'd assume that has come from, the Asian markets.
And something I've noticed, and you've been using the exchange a lot longer than I have, and observed the markets, in great detail. Would you say that liquidity is smaller, has kind of shrunk,
Yes.
compared to maybe 5, 6 years ago?
Yes. When I first started, I used to record the graphs. I used to record nearly enough every tennis match and every football match, or these different markets. I used to record the price movements, and I used to come up with strategies. In fact, one strategy in that book, Mastering Betfair, where you're laying a tennis player, you can't do that now. you can't do that now. It's because purely and simply in the lower bits of the market, 120 to say 1.10, there's very little money. So if you put your money in, it may not get matched, and if it does get matched, it's probably it's not going your way. It's a funny thing. Yes, whereas I can remember being on when I first joined Betfair. Within the year, I was watching the final round of the British Open golf, and Tiger Woods was in the lead, and I think he started off the round at even money, and you could see every stroke. The money was perfect. It was perfect until the end. It went from even money down to 1.01, but everything was perfect. You don't get that now. You get huge gaps, and I think, to be quite honest, the likes of the exchanges, they will be seeding the markets with their own money, because that's the only way that they're going to attract people in, or whatever. It's not like like the so-called peer-to-peer. I don't believe that is the case now.
So do you think? Sorry, Pete. No, go on.
Yeah, I would say as well, anybody that's doing match trading, back at the back price and lay at the lay price, because then you're getting that. If you put in a thing, it's like Matt who does our tennis. Very often he's moaning and groaning. He says, I've put up a price and nobody's taking it, and that's just the world we're living in now. Putting up a price and expecting somebody to take it. But the bookmakers or whatever, the exchange people, they're not stupid. They know what's going on, and they just don't touch it. And so take what's there, or lay, providing it's they're together. Say, like, if you're back in say like on the football, if it's 2.4 the back and the lay is 2.42, you go on the back. Don't start trying to be clever and back at 2.42, because the probability is that money may only be taken if it's going the other way.
And that's an interesting point as well with market makers, at the exchanges, actually seeding money into those markets. So do you think kind of a lot of, let's say, sharp punters, syndicates, other kind of groups have left the traditional exchanges and kind of looking for alternatives?
I possibly think so. I think so, because I can remember, and I won't name the exchange, but I don't. I put some money in there, and it just wasn't moving. And it hadn't moved for an hour or so. And I thought, I don't like this. I just immediately took it out. Because it to me, they were waiting there. If it had gone, like I say, if it had gone against me, they'd have probably taken it. But the market just didn't sort of move, and I thought, I don't like this. This is not natural. Nobody is taking that money.
And it's quite interesting as well, seeing I see lots of nostalgia around. So anyone who sort of read any kind of training guides and guides around the exchanges. First of all, I kind of want to recommend Pete's book, though it's a bit blurry with my filter, but Mastering Betfair, and there's a new edition on the way. So I do highly recommend this book, but I would actually perhaps recommend holding out. So when will the new edition of the book?
Well, we're hoping for around this time next year. I think the thing is, with the old book, a lot of it still stands, but it's the strategies are completely different now. Like this tennis one, you can't do that now.
Yeah, so that's something I was going to mention as well. So the nostalgia around betting, the early days of Betfair, where you could, well, this is supposedly what people tell me, was you could lay the draw in a game, and it was like printing free money, really, because the way that the markets moved is kind of totally different to now.
Yes, and obviously you did have a lot of people with inexperience, and we've all been there. You put money in a horse race pre-match, and next minute you're trying to back and lay in play, which again, I wouldn't so much recommend for novices now. I just wouldn't recommend doing that, because there's all sorts of shenanigans going on, bots going in and whatever, and for the inexperience, it's no good. I wouldn't do it myself. If a lot of these things, I think you've got to be like a hybrid, sort of like backing and backing laying, but not so much trading out.
So really just, I suppose, adopting more of the principles of a kind of plus EV bettor, kind of taking
Yes.
value, but kind of being prepared for that variance and some
Yes.
losing runs.
Yes, I think that is probably the best way. But I still think, though, I still, I reiterate that the pre-match football trading, especially in Premier League, the bigger tournaments, or is the best way. It is the best way of making money on the exchanges. And then what you can do, if you do make a profit, you can use that profit to do your other little bits and pieces.
So that's quite interesting, an interesting distinction. So I suppose for me, let's say a lot of bettors who steam chase and use bookmakers, and let's say pick off stale prices from Pinnacle, with a lot of value, but generally they would tend to be smaller leagues. They would tend to be things kind of off the radar, and there's I guess the general
Yes.
cliched idea is that it's harder to beat the more liquid markets, the kind of the bigger leagues. But you're mentioning that, but on the exchanges specifically, those are the ones that you should be targeting.
Right. No, not necessarily. I think you can certainly lay teams, the away teams in these lower leagues. They don't offer value, a lot of these away teams, and providing you can accept that, say a 4-1 shot wins, you're losing. Say if you had a tenner on it, you're losing £40. Providing you can accept that, I think that's a good way. But for actually putting money in, for actually trading, what is called trading, then the pre-match markets is the only way. Putting in and taking out, taking a position and then moving out. A lot of people used to take positions and move out. You can still do it in football, the big football games. You can say back under 2.5 goals at the start and come out after 10 minutes. But, that type of thing, you still can do that. You can still scout the markets, yes. But I think that is where the bigger money is. Obviously, you've got cricket and things like that, which is magnificent. I was looking. I've still yet to do it of following the money in cricket. Laying at resistance points, backing at resistance points. I haven't really looked into that, but Test match cricket, the big Test matches and 2020s, that there's opportunities there, I would say. But again, providing you keep a stop loss, you should be okay. But what I like about pre-match football, it's slow. You can get in there and you watch it. And as soon as that, and the price doesn't usually jump or fall, but providing you've got that stop loss in there, hopefully you should be okay. You are better using something like Gruss or Bet Angel or something like that. But you can obviously do it yourself. But obviously, if the price falls or goes against you and it goes big, you may have to come out, further down the line, sort of thing.
And so, what is it specifically about football markets compared to, like, I suppose with tennis, because of the way that the tournaments work, the markets are only up quite late. But in theory, if there was sort of sufficient liquidity, would the same principles apply
Yes, it's the
for
same principle.
NBA or
Yes,
for NFL?
Yes, it's the same principle. In fact, Stephen is looking at doing the same thing for an NFL as we do with the football. Because but then it'll only be in England. It'll only be the TV games that are, attract that type of money. But yes, it is a similar process. Tennis, whatever, it's a similar process. But they just don't attract the amount of money that these others. I wouldn't get involved in a game unless it's got at least 30,000 backed in it on a Saturday morning. And I mean, those figures that you see, apart from the big televised lunchtime game, maybe the figures you see on there, what's been matched in the game used to be a Thursday evening, 20 years ago.
So there was 30,000 on a Saturday morning. Now that would have been in the market already a few days before.
Yes, yes,
Okay, and then
yes.
what would you be kind of expecting on a Saturday morning back then?
Well, I can't. It would be at least 100,000 on each game, at least. Probably maybe 250,000. I can't quite remember now, but it used to be a lot more.
Mhm.
I mean, like tennis, like in play, like you got, like I say, like the in play where you say if you, in Matt's strategies, some of his strategies where you're backing a player who's 15-40 down on his serve or something like that. You can't go in like you used to because there just simply is not the money to do that.
Very
You
interesting.
could you can take an in like if tennis you could take say like at the start of a set I'll back this player or I'll lay this player and then you can take a position on that, but still will you get matched during that set? This is what you've got to think of.
And in terms of sort of going back to the book and and the things you've mentioned, but were there any other things in this second edition, that have been a sort of a big change or have needed an update from when you first wrote it?
Not really. It's only technical things. Only technical things. The trading principles and the principles of betting or risk taking are the same as they've always been. I would say to anybody, you only play with money that you can afford to lose. What has frustrated me really is that I've been, I have my own like shares ISA. Well, I've nearly lost something like, I've lost 10 bloody grand over the past couple of few years, and I'm thinking to myself, I should have put that into my trading, my sports trading. I wouldn't have lost that. Now I wouldn't, and it's plus I know nothing about financial trading. You assume that it's it's the market's going to go up every year, and unfortunately some shares don't, do they? But that's just the nature of it. But you've got to be playing with money that you can afford to lose. And you have it separate bank. That money is that for that purpose only. So that if you do have a losing run, you're not losing sleep over it. If you're backing out your pocket or you're betting or trading out of your family budget or whatever, that is not a good thing. Do not do that. Don't even start.
And in terms of obviously running Tradeonsports for for a fair while now, and seeing lots of kind of members come in, some members go, what I guess what have you noticed in terms of where some traders go wrong when, let's say, when they first start out, or where some traders perhaps kind of what you might
Yeah.
consider experience in terms of
Yeah.
time spent
Yeah,
gambling?
they simply don't spend time learning the process. They think it's automatic, and once they have a loser or they have a losing day, this says to me that they're betting out of their pocket. They're betting out of they haven't set themselves up to be, because it's all in the mind. It's mostly in the mind. You have, like pre-match trading, you have to have a stop loss. And once that stop loss is hit, you have to go out and take that loss. Every time, take that loss, because eventually you will get a good one. And that good one will wipe out all those little losses.
So would you say people have a sort of a bias in terms of in general, like trying to sort of smash their way out of losing positions,
Yes,
rather than kind of taking a small loss?
that's the problem. That's the problem, and they'll go and they'll start delving in markets that they shouldn't be delving, not sticking to the thing, jumping from one strategy to another. You should list your strategies, or keep a record of what you're doing, and you only do that. You say, I'm going to do this strategy, or I'm going to learn this. Because that's what it takes time. It took me time. I was completely, when I started delving into this in pretty much in full time, I wasn't prepared for it. Not mentally, really.
And was there anyone back then who, I suppose, sort of mentored you to or helped to um Yeah, to kind of
Yes,
advise you in terms of
Steve
your
Howe was
trading.
very good. He was very good. He used to run MG Racing or whatever it is, Mugs Game. He was very good. Yes, you have people, all of the people that you are, you know, you have people like Johnny, people like yourself, people like Matt, people like Stephen, you know, people like Brian, people who know. In fact, some of the members, you know, they're you always gather things off it. You always meet somebody that comes in and you think, wow, this bloke knows, you know, I can learn something from this bloke. So you're always sort of learning, but you've got to stick to the basics. You know, you've got to, your mindset shouldn't be, if you just say, if all of a sudden you're taking out £1,000 out of your family budget to do this, your mindset is completely different to if that £1,000, it doesn't matter, it doesn't, that is there for that purpose. Obviously, providing everybody else knows it's there for that purpose, they don't care in your family sort of circle. They know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it, and they'll support. But if you're, you know, digging out of, you know, that payment should be going to mortgage, then it's a completely different game. You
Oh,
know, and that's where
absolutely.
people go wrong. That's where people go wrong, and they expect to, what they do. They see on social media somebody's flying on a jet, and boom, I've won this, and oh, look at this hacker, you know, and that's coming, and it's not. That's not the real world. It's hard enough. It's hard enough getting, you know, a winner in an Asian handicap where it's a 50-50 chance. That's hard. Yeah, it's hard enough. You know, but providing, like on the Asian handicap, providing you can have, you know, 53 winners out of 147 losers, you can still, you know. But like I say, you don't know where the ups and downs and the peaks and troughs are going. You don't know when you're going to hit a bad run. The reality is, you can almost guarantee, like we've got this horse racing thing coming up. I can guarantee the first day that horse racing thing, it will be a poor day. I guarantee. It's just the way it is. It's, you know.
So yeah, on that topic, so that's something hopefully I'll be able to cover in another
Yes,
podcast, maybe
it's no
with
good
Matt.
asking me. I am not the subject matter expert on that,
But
I'm
it
afraid.
but it's quite interesting. So we at Trade on Sports, there will be a horse racing app within the app, which is
Yeah.
kind of built on very similar
Yes, it's following money.
indicators to the pre-match
Yeah.
football. So really sort of looking at where the smart money is going. It's had very promising results so far, and a sort of very interesting addition to kind of the suite of tools you know that's on offer at the moment. And in terms of I, I had a good question. It will come back to me. Yes. Also, so in your kind of quite very interesting kind of career in betting and kind of the projects and things you've been involved with. So you were a trainer for Betfair for some time as well. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What happened? They needed people who understood how the platform worked, and basically, what you did, you went down to the Betfair offices, you took a course. If you passed the course, then they used to put your name up, and the people used to contact you, and they did contact you. And I mean, what was quite interesting was it was eccentric. I went out to this farm, you know, in about 30 miles away, you know, in the fens this was. And there was this bloke there, and basically what he did, he wanted me to show his son how to, you know, the basics of trading, how to use Betfair. Was what his son was going to do. He was going to make money on the horses rather than go out and get a summertime job. Well, I said to him, I said, you're setting him up for a fall there. I said, he, you know, he just doesn't know. He doesn't even know the basics. You know, he doesn't know, you know, about stop loss, risk and reward, and things like that. And it was, but it's that they were doing things like laying golfers at 10-1 and things like that. Well, it's only it's all very well for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden, you know, it will go on. But yes, that's basically what you're doing. You weren't there to sort of show people winning strategies. You were there to show them how the platform worked.
Very interesting. And what was the kind of mix of people who were there? So obviously you mentioned a few. I mean, was that kind of the kind of profile? Were there people kind of coming in from finance, just punters?
What you mean? You mean the customers or the people that were doing the training?
So the ones who were interested in the training.
Some that, yes, things like that. Yes. People who are sort of, who were sort of, yeah. There was one bloke actually. He made his money was made backing and laying Big Brother.
Oh wow. Okay.
But Big Brother used to be huge
Yeah.
then. It was huge, and not like it is now. It was absolutely massive, and the markets, you wouldn't believe it. So he was backing and laying selections. He was keeping into the news, getting people to inform him, and that's how he.
Oh, so we
made
had
it.
contacts, so let's say through like Channel 4 and people.
Yeah, so
Right.
and
Very
so's done
interesting.
this, or so and so. Yeah. Or he used to read every social media bit, every little bit he could about what
I
was
mean,
going on.
I've tried that with my wife with Love Island, but it hasn't been a
Yes,
profitable strategy so
I
far. Maybe next year.
yeah, I used to actually do it on X Factor, and those were the days when it was big. And yeah, I was lucky on one or two occasions. I traded in and traded out basically.
And what I've noticed with Eurovision, the money matched in the Eurovision
Yes,
markets is huge, and
yes,
so I've got kind of like, looked at that. I'd like to look at that in more detail next year. But I mean, I see there's people on Twitter with quite advanced predictive models, kind of going all the way from sort of the early stages, months ahead, looking at that kind of things. I suppose there are lots of things to bet on. Political markets. Obviously, we had
yeah.
the
Political, yeah. I
US
mean, the
election.
US, yes. Now that will be an interesting one. I thought one of the best ones was when Trump got in first time. I can't remember his opponent now.
Against Hillary
I
Clinton, was it?
can't remember, but they were the favorite, and you could lay them at 1.2 or something. But the great thing is during the night there's swings, and it was always going to go above 1.2. So you can trade in and trade out, providing what times the results are going to be known, and there's yeah, the price moves up and down. But this next one will be a good one, I would say.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. There's already been so much kind of movement in there and changes. It'll be very, very interesting to see. And in terms of other things that you've done, I think something people are always interested in when we have these kind of discussions is the kind of the inner workings of a betting syndicate, because you have experience there as well.
Yes.
I have experience myself, and it's an interesting world, but I think sort of it's also very mysterious. So maybe for the listeners, what were your experiences like? What was it like working for them? Did it, was it different to what you expected at the time?
Yes, completely. I mean, it was very informal. Well, essentially, I was, I can't remember where I was now. One morning, this guy rang me, and he said, "Will you bet for us?" And I said, "Who are you? What? How do you mean?" He said, "I'm so and so, so and so." He said, "We'd like you to bet for us," and he said, "What we want to do," he said, "we'll start you off on £1,000." He said, "Then we want to get you up to 3, and then 5 very quickly, and then 10,000." And I was thinking to myself, what the bloody hell is he, going? He says, "What I'll do," he says, "I'll send you the link to the platform we use, and then you can have a look at it." So I looked at it and I saw it was all Asian handicap sort of thing, and I thought to myself, you know, I'm gonna speak to Johnny about this, because he's a nutter, as we know. And I spoke to her. I said, what do you think to this?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, let's have a go." He said. Anyway, I rung back the bloke. I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested." I said, "Do you mind if I, have a colleague with me?" I said, and we do it as a pair. And so we started off and we started winning. And the bloke actually rung me, in conversation, and he said, "You're the only people that are doing this in play." He said, "You are the only ones." He says, "Mind you, you are winning." And I said, "Yeah, it was." Yeah, Johnny's sort of, he's sharp on this type of thing. What I would say though is you would not believe the amount of money that was in that account. You wouldn't believe it. It was millions. So obviously these are alternative investors who are slinging people. Now, obviously, there wasn't just me and Johnny and whatever. There were a whole bunch. And unfortunately, the syndicate closed. We were profitable, but the syndicate closed. He said they're losing too much money and they want to pull out. But it was as literally as informal as that. And basically what terms you were on, you got 20% of the winnings. If you lost that month, you didn't get anything, but they didn't charge you, if you know what I mean. If you won that month, you got 20% of the winnings. So it was on a monthly basis.
And I mean,
don't know whether you've had a similar experience or.
But my experience was interesting. I suppose it was kind of, I guess, probably quite a while afterwards. So in terms of, I guess, what you and Johnny were doing, you were essentially, were you working from models that they had?
Yeah,
You had your own
no. We would.
process.
They let us get on with it. They said just get on with it. They said here's the platform. Just place the bets on this platform, and that's it. They didn't even monitor anything. The frightening thing is, on the first bet, we could have put on £1 million. That's the frightening thing about that. We could have put £1 million on, and they there's nothing they could have done about it.
I think, yeah, it's a very different landscape now. I think with kind of the rise of data science, the kind of the models that syndicates are using, and I'd imagine the competition between let's say smaller and medium-sized syndicates and the kind of the giants, the Star Lizards, smart odds of the UK. But then I guess what I find interesting is there are lots of kind of smaller syndicates. I say smaller, not to sort of denigrate that. These are they're still putting on 50 grand, 100 grand on games. That's sizable amounts of money that will move the markets, but in relative terms. But you just won't hear about them. They don't have websites, or if they do, it's kind of it's just to kind of tick a box, just for company's house. You don't hear much from them. You don't sort of see them anywhere, and it's a kind of very sort of secretive kind of cloak and dagger world, which is really, really interesting. And
yes, I was amazed at how, like I said, this bloke just he just phoned me. I didn't know who he was. I don't know how he got my number.
So through your work with Betfair,
maybe? Yes, through various things. Yes, through Tradeonsports has been going for quite a few years. Tradeonsports.co.uk. What I used to do, I used to give out. It was a monthly newsletter, and it just used to have graphs. I'd recorded graphs and come up with strategies through that, and that's what it was.
Very, very interesting.
And then it turned to ratings. Ratings were a big thing then. You couldn't record. Betfair stopped you recording you could buy the graphs and charts, but then they stopped that. And then it went into, and then I thought, well, ratings are the way to go forward here. And then I did the ratings, and then I met up with Matt, who knew Steve, who did racing, and Matt, we had Trade on Tennis then. And then, Johnny came in and said, can you do this for football? And Stephen was able to do that for football, and that's how it worked,
So maybe it's example. So just to talk a little bit more about Trade on Sports, how people can sign up, what's kind of offered. I've been a member for a while now, and obviously associated with Trade on Sports. I am a bit biased, but at the same time, I think it's a fantastic tool. But maybe from your perspective, kind of what is it that it offers, and what is it that's different about Trade on Sports to maybe other services that are out there?
Well, I think like say like the football, you have part of the service is based around the time of the opening goal. Johnny is an expert on that, and he's always in there. Now, he's a little bit of a Marmite character. You either love him or you hate him. A lot of people don't like him. But the thing is, if you read through what he's saying and you take time, it's incredible. And there are some real opportunities in that way. And then obviously you've got the gold service of ours, which is basically the pre-match trading, which I sort of head up. Then you've got tennis with Matt. I mean, Matt's a great tennis trader, and the application is good there. And then we've got these ratings and bets, which is a separate entity itself. And then up and coming, we've got this horse racing app. So it's a good application, and we've got quite a few people involved who are quite knowledgeable.
Then
like for example, Johnny is in the room,
25 hours a day.
yeah. And you wouldn't get that. Where else would you get? you see, like I say, people don't like him. People don't, they don't like this and that. But you can learn quite a lot from him.
I think, yeah, I mean, the kind of the support, the detail that Johnny goes into, we'll put a link up as well, because there was a podcast that I did with Johnny where we really talked in depth about his process, how he sees football.
Yes, and he's I mean, I can remember meeting him because obviously he was on the Betfair forums, and I thought, who is this nutter? And I sort of reached out to him, and then he said, yeah, I'll take you out for lunch in London. I met him in London, and that first meeting, I can remember we came away from it saying, well, 0-1 scoreline at halftime could lead to more goal. And it was literally that basic. But then he started looking into this, shots on goal, shots on target, that type of thing. And then he moved on to certain things. He pattern recognizes. You would not believe how quick he can pattern recognize. It's unbelievable.
And did he take you somewhere posh? Like I always see pictures.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. It was the Landmark or something, Landmark Hotel or something. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, very good. Yeah. So I wasn't playing, so I was quite happy.
So, I mean, really, yeah, Tradeonsports is kind of like it's a one-stop shop, really, for, because you've got football, you've got pre-match, you've got in-play football, you've got tennis, you've got there's NFL, which has been quite profitable in the last few years, and the occasional NBA bet as well. I'm also posting up things now as well on the golf and various bits and bobs. So really you've got kind of a whole suite of tools.
Yes, what I like about it, it's all stats based. It's all logical. There is a logical reason why why the strategies are being suggested and whatever. That's what I quite like about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you join today, you're not going to be retiring, you're not going to be on the beach in wherever in a month's time. It's not like that. It's a tool, to help people come up with good strategies which they can use, in the betting arena.
Absolutely. And then what I notice in particular, there's opportunities that you see on Tradeonsports that you don't necessarily see with other software or other services, or I don't see other tipsters necessarily looking at those kind of specifics. It's quite, there's some quite unique opportunities that but it is something that takes time to kind of fully absorb. And again, you have to, I think
you've got to be a bit of a data sort of, you've got to have that time. I've noticed now with the Italians, we have an Italian section. Basically, we have an Italian academy. It's quite a few Italians. I can't believe how many people are interested in this in Italy. But we tend to find that the people that stay are the people who sort of like get it. They're more, I don't know what word what word would you use? They assess things better. They're pragmatic. They take
I think they're in it for the long haul. They
can take the correct approach. They understand it. They get that you can have a losing day. That's
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, it's not this is this hacker, it's going to cut, there's very little booming going on.
Because that does tend to be a feature of the betting space. So there'll be a link below the video for anyone interested in signing up to Tradeonsports to give it a try, and then feel free to reach out to either myself or to Pete, any of the team, if you have any more specific questions on that. One question I wanted to ask, obviously, we're very kindly being sponsored by BetDex for this podcast, and it's a really interesting time in the betting space. It's quite an intriguing idea that BetDex have, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this idea, especially with the way we're seeing, let's say, liquidity in the Betfair exchange declining, kind of frustrations with customers, depositing and withdrawing funds, and the growth of crypto as well. So the idea of a betting exchange which is on on a blockchain, on this Monaco protocol, which they've developed, and this peer-to-peer platform, essentially this betting exchange, but run in quite a different way. So there's a lot of money behind it. A lot of funding that's been raised, some really big names from the industry, who've developed this concept. So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the potential for their growth, that kind of niche in the market, and where you think it could go.
Yes, with the sort of like the crypto thing, I think yes, I think it wouldn't surprise me if this morphs into something different or bigger in the next few years. It'll be interesting to see what happens with it. I think you're quite right with the current situation of like various exchanges going down, people not, that money is still out there. There's still people that are interested in this type of thing, and it really takes somebody with a new approach, and I think it'll be interesting to see where it is in a few years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's things can happen very quickly, and I suppose I mean, I saw a post from Pete Webb's Bet Angel forum where it was the launch of Betfair, and there was a picture of it, and it was on some kind of Microsoft
Yes.
Paint or something.
Yes,
It was like
yes,
really, really
yes,
basic, but it was just like, come along to the sports cafe, free beers to celebrate the launch of the Betfair exchange, a quite sort of casual thing, and it's grown into this kind of behemoth. And or at a certain point, maybe you would think it would have this kind of monopoly
yes.
on liquidity on the exchanges, the way that, let's say, Microsoft, or,
Yeah,
have a monopoly on, on Windows. But
yes.
yeah, what you're seeing is that actually there are a lot of competitors. People are more willing to to move across. Liquidity seems to be actually growing at other places,
Yes,
and
you'll have
maybe
had some very big players on Betfair, very big players, and the money will have been churning in and out, churning in and out, churning in and out. And I think, to be quite honest, a lot of people benefit from that. Obviously, the losers don't. But what they'll have done when they put the extra piece on, the 20%, that will have taken away that edge sort of thing. So they'll have taken that money elsewhere. That's the reality of it. The very big players who were being charged, big commission, 20% commission, they will have simply have gone as soon as that 20% commission. And of course, the people who have built themselves up, they'll have gone as well, but the 20% commission. And it's a pity, really, but that's where we are.
I think, yeah, that's worth mentioning as well. With BetDex,
These will have
there
been
is
big
no
players.
yeah, so
They'll
there
be
is no.
big players, big investors.
Yeah, and I think that's one advantage of something like BetDex, where there is no premium charge. There's no incentive for them to necessarily do that, and you can, and it essentially works as a skin as well. So you can actually, let's say, build another betting exchange on top of it. But I see somewhere like India, for example, where there could be a huge
Yeah.
market to replace something like Orbit, or to compete with it. And again, so kind of it's an avenue for sort of sharp bettors to use.
Yes, if the USA gets involved as well, but they've been sort of coming on board for some time, and they never have, got there, have they? Really? It's an interesting one. This crypto. I mean, what's your thoughts on this? Cryptocurrency. Where do you see that going?
It's really interesting. I mean, I struggle to understand all the technical sides of it. I've dabbled in crypto myself, and follow a couple of services, basically following the sharp money. I haven't got a clue,
Yes.
what
Yes. No. No.
what the technicalities are. I mean, some of the the coins, I try to understand what are the kind of the uses for it, and sort of followed Bitcoin from quite early on. I wish that I'd invested earlier. I mean, I'd read about it, but I hadn't actually put any money on until a little bit later down the line. But thankfully, I didn't sort of spend it on a pizza, the early days, like I heard someone did. And I think it's really interesting in terms of the betting space. It's quite new and innovative, and I don't think the betting industry is necessarily an innovative industry. They tend, from what I see, they tend to lag behind other industries in terms of
Yes.
implementing technology. I mean, where
Yes.
they are quite advanced is kind of finding ways to restrict you and to spy on you.
Yes.
Beyond that, in terms of things that we take for granted now, like being able to cash out your bet, that's a fairly recent
Yes. Yes.
invention. And again, the kind of the markets, the kind of menu of things you can bet on now compared to like 15, 20 years ago, it was very limited back then. So I think that there's continual advances, but perhaps it takes time. And something like crypto, again, the wider public are getting more and more recognition. But I think at a certain point, I see it as, the world is kind of in quite a chaotic moment. And the economic situation in places like the UK and around the world is quite precarious. And the way I see something like Bitcoin is, it becomes essentially like a digital gold. And other coins where things can be
Yes.
speeded up,
Yeah.
Ethereum, the way that
Yeah.
contracts can be signed, much quicker. But again, I'm no expert, so I've probably sort of made a hash of explaining all of that. But I don't think you need to necessarily understand all the ins and outs of it, but just sort of how it might be used in the future. And there's
Yes.
lots of
Yes.
people
And
doing
I
clever
think that's
stuff.
why I said it'll be interesting to see where that side of things is in 5 years' time, because they're obviously knowing that it is going to develop.
Absolutely.
It will be. I mean, BetDex, they're not available in the UK at the moment, are they?
Not at the moment. They are available in Ireland. There are particular territories where they're not operating just yet, but that situation may change in the future.
Yes.
It's a very interesting platform. I mean, I was I've been looking at, for example, in the tennis markets, very competitive prices. I
Yes.
think coming up to the US Open, that you could get some really interesting opportunities to bet there. They don't discourage, let's say, arbitrage players, for example. You could
Yeah.
spot discrepancies there in some of the
Yeah.
markets. It would be a very interesting tool, and liquidity is kind of growing all the time. I'll be writing some pieces, some previews for the major leagues coming up, and seeing where we go from there. So it's very early days, but I think it's a really interesting tool. At the same time, something like Betfair, when it first started, again, was
Yes.
what it was then compared to what it is now. It's a very different thing. So yeah, very, very, very interesting times. Pete, I was to say, thank you very, very much for for meeting with me. It's been really insightful. I mean, every time I have a chat with you, it's insightful just to kind of to pick your sort of vast knowledge on betting, on the exchanges, and sort of how you view things. And thank you very, very much. And hopefully we can get you on again in the future. It wasn't too painful for you.
No, no. Anytime will do. Anytime will do.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you very much, guys, for listening. And the links to Trade on Sports and the special sign up offer for BetDex will be in the description. Please like, follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And thank you very much.